Hey guys, and welcome back to
Megajordinary.
If you're new here, this channel is all about true crime, conspiracies, mystery, and sometimes a little bit of lifestyle thrown in. So if that's what you're into, feel free to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you can be notified when we drop a new video. So before we get into this video, I want to give a disclaimer. All of the information that we are going to be discussing within this video, we have obtained from the internet and news sources. They are in no way, shape or form intended to upset or distress anybody. This video is merely for educational purposes. We have just gathered all the information and facts to do with this video and this case in particular and have accumulated it all into one video. We also want to give a bit of a trigger warning too, that some of the information that we are going to be discussing in this video is quite graphic to do with bodily parts. So we're going to add in a time frame before we start discussing this area of the case, so you can feel free to skip forward. So without further ado, let's get into today's video.
So today's case is the tragic murder of 32-year-old Lorraine Cox in Exeter, England on the 1st of September 2020.
Lorraine was a native of Exeter, but she had actually moved to Scotland in October of 2019 to live with her partner Elise Fallow. Elise and Lorraine had met in 2018, and as we all know, 2020 was a very hard year for the entire globe. It turned everyone's lives upside down. And Elise said that Lorraine was feeling extraordinarily homesick. She missed her family, she missed her friends, so she ultimately decided to return home in the August of 2020, literally a couple of days before her murder. But Elise said that her and Lorraine were still very much in a relationship and they were in constant contact with each other.
Lorraine was on a night out the night her murder took place. She was out catching up with some friends that she had not seen since moving to Scotland. The last sighting of Lorraine was approximately around 1:30 am on September 1st, and she was walking home alone. When Lorraine didn't return home the following morning, her family reported her missing to the police.
So one thing to note about the UK in general, the streets are heavily monitored with CCTV. Not just shops, the actual streets are plastered with CCTV. And there's someone watching the CCTV at all times, actively live, which is a phenomenal thing to have for the safety of others. But unfortunately, in this case, it didn't prevent Lorraine's untimely murder, but it did help solve it. And once Lorraine was reported missing to the police, they actually seized 10,800 hours of CCTV footage from 400 CCTV cameras. And this was in the vicinity of where Lorraine was last seen, the pubs and clubs that she had frequented earlier on in the night with her friends. There was actually CCTV footage of her eating a kebab on a bench in a street close to where she left her friends after the night out. So the CCTV cameras picked up Lorraine's entire route on that fateful night. And in this footage, the last sighting of Lorraine showed a man. In the footage, the police said that Lorraine appeared evidently under the influence of alcohol, which she was on a night out with her friends. That's kind of what you would expect if she was enjoying some beverages, if she was drinking alcohol. You know, she was just enjoying her night out and she was trying to walk home safely. So this man that seen her obviously noticed that Lorraine was under the influence and decided that that was his time to take advantage of Lorraine, which is absolutely disgusting.
This man was later identified as a 24-year-old man named Azam Mangori, who was originally from Iraq. And Mangori had only moved to the Exeter area in April of 2020. Mangori had actually tried to seek asylum in December of 2018, but was refused and was living under the radar. He also went by the name of Christopher Mayer. In the early hours of September the 1st, Mangori was out walking the streets alone when he noticed Lorraine was also walking home alone. So as we were saying before, Mangori was obviously an opportunist.
So after the police seen Mangori on the CCTV footage, they took him in to police custody immediately. He was actually living in a flat above a kebab shop at the time, and they had questioned the owner of the kebab shop, and he said that he owned the flat above and Mangori had been a tenant for a couple of weeks at this stage. And the kebab shop owner described Mangori as a very quiet, strange character, but had always paid his rent on time. So he never had any trouble with him per se. And remember, at this time, Lorraine was still a missing person, so the police did not know at this point, when they took Mangori in initially for questioning, that Lorraine was deceased. But they still considered her an extremely high-risk missing person. So Mangori said that when they got into the laneway, Lorraine and Mangori had a sexual encounter, but he said that he never brought Lorraine back up to his flat, despite CCTV contradicting this entirely.
We are going to insert some stills from the CCTV footage here. A week after Lorraine's disappearance, her dismembered remains were found at Timper Hill in Newton Street on September 13th. This was a woodland area, and Lorraine's body had been dismembered into 7 pieces. Trigger warning, so this is where we talk about the details of Lorraine's murder. Later, some more of Lorraine's dismembered body parts were found in the alleyway of the kebab shop underneath some wood.
Lorraine's arms and legs had been removed at the joints in a process called discriticulation. Lorraine's torso was mutilated by a strip of her skin being removed from her buttocks and lower back. And Lorraine was also a type 1 diabetic, and she actually had a tattoo on her arm to represent this in case of an emergency, so everybody would know that she needed insulin or she needed sugar to get her bloods back up, to prevent diabetic coma, etc. And this tattoo was completely removed when they found Lorraine's arm. And all of Lorraine's remains had been wrapped tightly in 4 layers of bin bags that were taped up.
Unfortunately, the decomposition of Lorraine's remains made it impossible to determine the cause of death. It is suspected that Lorraine suffered asphyxiation by Mangori, as Lorraine's t-shirt was found in her mouth. Lorraine's body was mutilated days after her murder. Her body lay in her killer's flat for exactly 1 week after Lorraine's murder, and 1 day before Mangori's arrest, leaving his flat carrying a Sports Direct hold-all bag, the contents we now know to be Lorraine's dismembered body parts.
He was also caught on CCTV making numerous trips to the store Wilko's to buy bin bags in the week of the events taking place. And so the CCTV footage as a whole of all the stuff that we have spoke about, all the CCTV compiled together, helped Lorraine's murder be solved and helped Lorraine's killer be caught. The police also found out whilst he was in their custody that Mangori had actually been looking up videos of people with amputations and women in particular with leg deformities. He also had Google searched how to dig a grave by hand, and this was in the days after Lorraine's murder, so in that week timeline. So him looking up videos of amputees prior to Lorraine's murder shows that this was premeditated, and unfortunately it was a case of wrong place, wrong time for Lorraine, and Mangori was an extremely sadistic, evil opportunist.
Mangori denied blatantly murdering Lorraine intentionally. He said that Lorraine and himself had a sexual encounter in the alleyway, and proceeded to say that they moved up to the flat, took drugs together, drank alcohol, and all of a sudden Lorraine died. He said he fell asleep, and when he woke up he realised that Lorraine was dead and panicked, so he wrapped her body in cling film.
Which is obvious that this was clearly not the case, although police could not identify Lorraine's cause of death because the decomposition of her bodily parts there was just no way to tell, but they reckoned that it was asphyxiation or smothering because, as you said, the manner in which her t-shirt was found in her mouth And the police said because of the web searches that he had previously made, Mangori was an opportunist waiting for a victim. Mangori actually also took Lorraine's SIM out of her phone and put it into his phone, and he was texting her girlfriend, her family members, her friends. He even went onto her social medias in the days after her murder, pretending to be Lorraine and pretending that she was still alive. CCTV also showed that Mangori had made a trip to the River Exe in the week, and divers did search the river, but nothing was found, so we don't know why he went there or what the reason for that was. The forensic examination of Mangori's room found Lorraine's blood everywhere. They also linked his DNA to 2 knives that were found in the bin with Lorraine's blood on it. And Lorraine's credit card and driving licence had been cut up and discarded. So all this evidence, it's clear as day what occurred on the night of Lorraine's murder. So Azam Mangori was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the murder and unlawful dismemberment and burial of Lorraine Cox. This story is actually so harrowing, especially because, as you can see in the stills, it was in the height of the pandemic. In the middle of the night, nobody around. It was like a ghost town.
It was empty, yeah. Very, very eerily empty.
Eerily empty. And the fact that you can see Lorraine and then Azam lurking in the background and getting closer, kind of like zoning in on her, and eventually putting his arm around her and luring her into the alleyway, and then obviously we know what the outcome of that was. It's just absolutely horrific. And to think that she had just moved back, still had her girlfriend in Scotland, was just catching up with friends that she hadn't seen in a long time.
It really was just wrong place, wrong time.
The lesson in this is to always make sure that you don't go home anywhere on your own, especially at the hour of the night. Especially if you're been out with friends and maybe had a couple of drinks. Just always try to be on your guard. And it's so sad that women... This just reminds me a lot of the case that I recently covered when the policeman murdered Sarah Everard when she was on her way home from a friend's house. This should not be a thing. Like, women should not have to be afraid to walk anywhere on their own, but
no.
There are predators out there, there are opportunists, and it's a sick, sick world that we live in. Honestly, it really is, truly.
So it's always wise to go out in groups.
Yeah.
And always have that one friend that you can travel with home and to the club and home from the club, or wherever it may be. Just always have someone to travel there with and home with.
Yeah. Don't have headphones in, don't be on your phone. Always walk with a purpose. Be aware of your surroundings and stuff, because you never know who's watching you, and it's so, so scary. Thing like that. Obviously it does happen to men, but it's something that you probably would never even...
I wouldn't even think of.
Yeah.
Or have to think of.
Yeah. Whereas
it's
with
always
me, it's always a worry in the back of my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We are sending love to Lorraine's girlfriend and family, and this was such a tragic case to cover.
Yeah. We're so grateful to have a platform to be able to speak about these things and raise awareness, and you know, this video could save a life essentially. Cases like this need to be brought to light so that they can be stopped, and hopefully there's never a case like this again. She was such a talented, vibrant young woman, and she had her whole life ahead of her, so her death should not be in vain.
So that's all for today. Don't forget to give this video a like, hit the subscribe button, and also don't forget to turn on notifications so you will be notified when we drop a brand new video.
Thank you so much for watching, and feel free to share this very important video. Bye!
Over and out.